Toxic people come in many forms. Some drain your energy, some trigger your emotions, and some try to pull you into their chaos because chaos is the only language they understand. But the truth is this: you don't have to let anyone control your peace, your reactions, or your direction. You can choose to respond, not absorb. You can choose to walk away, not collapse. You can choose to protect your energy like your life depends on it, because it actually does. When you're dealing with someone toxic, your goal is not to fix them, because you can't fix what doesn't want to change. Your goal is to manage yourself so well that their behavior loses all power over you. And that begins with awareness. The first clever move is mastering emotional distance. Not physical distance, emotional. You can sit right next to a toxic person and still be mentally miles away. You don't react to every jab. You don't let their mood dictate yours. You create a mental shield where their words hit but never penetrate. This is not coldness, it's discipline. When you refuse to emotionally invest in their drama, you take back your power. The strategy is reducing your availability. Toxic people thrive on access to your emotions, your time, your attention. Once you start limiting these, they lose their grip, you reply slower, you engage less. You stop giving them front row seats in your life. You don't announce it, you just do it. Slowly, they realize you're no longer their emotional punching bag or their validation source. You learn the art of neutrality. Toxic people want reactions because reactions feed them. But when you respond with calm, steady neutrality, you starve them. They expect anger, tears, panic, defensiveness. Give them none of it. Give them nothing to push, pull, or manipulate. Neutrality is not weakness, it's control. Use boundaries like armor. Boundaries are not walls to keep people out. They are rules that keep your peace protected. And you don't need to explain or justify your boundaries. You don't need permission to protect yourself. A simple, no, I'm not available, or that doesn't work for me is enough. People who respect you will understand. People who don't respect you were the ones the boundary was meant for. Observe without absorbing. Study how they behave, not to judge them, but to understand what you're dealing with. Is it insecurity? Is it manipulation? Is it attention seeking? Understanding the pattern helps you detach from taking things personally. Their behavior stops feeling like an attack and starts looking like a predictable pattern that has nothing to do with you. Avoid giving them information they can weaponize. The less they know, the less they can twist, provoke, or use against you. Share only what's necessary. Toxic people often pretend to care just to extract details. They can manipulate. Don't give them emotional ammunition. Keep your vulnerabilities for people who deserve them. Choose your battles wisely. Not every comment deserves a comeback. Not every insult requires a defense. Sometimes silence is the most powerful statement you can make. You win when you stop playing their game. You win when they realize they can't pull you into conflict anymore. You win when your peace becomes more important than proving a point. Detach from the outcome. You can handle yourself perfectly, and they may never change. That's not your responsibility. You are responsible for your peace, your health, your emotional stability. Sometimes the smartest move is walking away completely, not out of weakness, but out of self-respect. Detachment is not abandoning a person, it's abandoning the chaos that person brings into your life. When you apply these 8 strategies, something powerful happens. You stop living in reaction mode. You stop being emotionally hijacked. You stop letting toxic people decide how you feel. You build a version of yourself that cannot be shaken, manipulated, or drained. You become grounded, unbothered, and untouchable in your peace. And that is how you win, not by fighting them, but by mastering yourself. When you're dealing with toxic people, the most powerful advantage you have is your emotional energy. Not your intelligence, not your arguments, not your explanations, your emotional energy. Because toxic people survive on reactions. They feed on pulling you into their emotional storms, making you defend yourself, making you justify things, making you feel guilty, confused, or angry. The moment you react, they gain influence over your state of mind. But when you protect your emotional energy and stay neutral, something shifts. You create a space where their behavior stops being a trigger and becomes just noise you choose not to internalize. And mastering this is not about being detached from life, it's about being detached from unnecessary chaos. It starts with understanding that emotional neutrality is not weakness, It is emotional strength at its highest level. People often think staying calm means being passive or allowing someone to disrespect you, but it's the opposite. Staying calm is refusing to hand over control of your feelings. It is rejecting the invitation to drama. It is recognizing that your peace is more valuable than proving a point. Toxic people expect you to respond emotionally. They push buttons, provoke reactions, and create moments where you feel cornered. They understand that if they can drag you into emotional territory, they can confuse you, manipulate you, or pull you into a cycle where you spend your energy on them instead of yourself. The smartest thing you can do is refuse to give them what they want. You do this by controlling what you feed. When you starve their behavior of emotional fuel, the dynamic changes. They lose their sense of power. They lose their ability to pull you into their patterns. The key to protecting your emotional energy is learning how to observe without reacting. When a toxic person speaks, watch their behavior like a spectator instead of a participant. Notice their tone, their patterns, the way they repeat the same strategies to get a rise out of you. When you observe instead of absorb, you create internal distance. Their words hit your ears but don't sink into your emotions. Think of their negativity like a ball thrown at you. You don't have to catch it. You can simply let it pass by. The moment you understand that not every comment requires a reaction, not every provocation deserves attention, you free yourself from their influence. They only win when you respond the way they expect. Break that pattern, and you break their control. Another part of emotional protection is not taking their behavior personally. Toxic people operate from their own unresolved issues, insecurities, and fears. Their behavior is a reflection of what's happening inside them, not a reflection of your worth or your character. When someone tries to belittle you, it usually says more about how small they feel. When they try to control you, it exposes their fear of losing influence. When they try to trigger you, it's because they don't know how to handle their own emotions. Understanding this helps you detach from the illusion that their behavior is about you. Your neutrality becomes easier when you realize their chaos does not belong to you. You don't have to pick up what they're dropping. Staying neutral also requires learning how to control your face, your voice, and your body language. Toxic people look for signs that they've affected you. A change in expression, a raised voice, a tense posture. These are signals that they've gotten under your skin. When you stay calm, steady, and neutral, you communicate that their attempts have no effect. Your calmness becomes your statement. The less they can read your emotions, the less access they have to manipulate you. It's not about hiding your feelings, it's about choosing where and with whom you share them. Toxic people don't deserve that access. Your emotions should be reserved for people who respect them. Part of protecting your emotional energy is also learning to pause before responding. Your pause is power. It stops you from reacting impulsively. It gives you space to think, evaluate, and choose the best response instead of the emotional one. A toxic person wants immediacy because immediacy gives them control. But you break the pattern when you take a breath, slow down, and respond with clarity instead of emotion. The pause protects you from being pulled into their urgency and instability. It allows you to stay in control of yourself even when the situation feels heated. Another way to maintain neutrality is refusing to clarify, defend, or over-explain yourself. Toxic people use confusion as a weapon. When they question your decisions or challenge your boundaries, they're hoping you'll justify yourself. The more you explain, the more material they have to twist or attack. Staying neutral means answering with brevity and calm certainty. Short, simple responses. I understand. I see. Let's move on. That's your opinion. These phrases shut down manipulation because they don't give emotional openings. You stay steady while they run out of angles. To preserve your emotional energy, you must also learn to walk away from conversations that are not going anywhere. Toxic people often shift arguments, deny facts, or twist narratives just to keep you engaged. The moment you realize the conversation is circular or unproductive, you disengage. Not with anger, not with frustration, just calm withdrawal. You don't fight for closure. You don't chase understanding. You don't try to fix what isn't yours. Walking away is not defeat. It's choosing peace over pointless battles. Emotional protection is a discipline. It requires practice, awareness, and a commitment to valuing your peace above someone else's dysfunction. But once you master it, you become someone who cannot be controlled, manipulated, or drained. You become stable in a world full of instability. You become the person who sets the tone, not the one who reacts to it. And no toxic person can thrive in the environment of someone who refuses to be emotionally moved by them. When you start limiting a toxic person's access to your time, emotions, and personal information, you change the entire dynamic of the relationship. Toxic people rely heavily on access to your reactions, access to your attention, access to your vulnerabilities. They drain what you willingly give, and they manipulate what you openly share. The moment you reduce that access, even quietly, they feel it. And that shift is where you begin reclaiming your power. You don't need confrontation. You don't need a dramatic announcement. You simply make yourself less available to their demands, their games, and their emotional pull. The smartest moves are the quiet ones, and limiting access is one of the quietest yet strongest strategies you can ever use. Toxic people depend on immediacy. They want fast replies, fast reactions, fast explanations. The urgency they create is designed to keep you off balance because people who are rushed make emotional decisions instead of clear ones. When you slow down your availability, replying later, engaging less frequently, not jumping to meet every request, you break that urgency. You communicate without saying a word that your time is valuable, that their demands don't automatically control your schedule, that you don't revolve around their chaos. They begin to realize they no longer have the same grip on your attention. And without attention, a toxic person loses a powerful weapon. Another powerful shift comes from limiting your emotional availability. Toxic people constantly seek emotional openings, moments when you're tired, stressed, guilty, or vulnerable. They insert themselves into those cracks because that's where manipulation thrives. When you learn to guard your emotions and give them nothing more than surface-level access, you take away their ability to exploit you. This does not mean becoming cold or shutting down emotionally. It means learning to choose who genuinely deserves access to your emotional world. People who uplift you should have access. People who drain you should not. Emotional availability is a privilege, and toxic people should never be given that privilege. One of the biggest ways toxic people manipulate is by pretending to care so they can gather information. They will ask personal questions, encourage you to vent, or make you feel like they're a safe space just long enough to extract something useful. Later, that exact information will be used against you through guilt, shame, or manipulation. When you limit the personal details you share, you eliminate their ammunition. You start keeping your inner life private, revealing only what is necessary. You start giving shorter answers, changing the subject, or redirecting conversations away from your personal matters. Over time, they notice they no longer have access to your emotional weak spots. And when they lose that access, they lose control. Reducing availability also means limiting your physical presence. You stop showing up to every conflict, you decline invitations that drain you, you spend less time in environments where they dominate the energy, you create distance, not to punish them, but to protect yourself. Physical distance gives your mind space to reset, breathe, and think clearly. Toxic people thrive in proximity because proximity gives them more chances to push boundaries. When you introduce space, you introduce clarity, and clarity destroys manipulation. Another dimension of limiting access is controlling how much of your success, plans, and goals you reveal. Toxic people often react in two ways. They either belittle your achievements or subtly sabotage them. They may pretend to be supportive, but their energy will always carry hints of jealousy, criticism, or discouragement. When you start keeping your plans private, they can no longer influence your direction. You don't need to share your goals with someone who secretly wants to see you fall. You don't need validation from someone who only celebrates you when it benefits them. Silence becomes your protection. Privacy becomes your strategy. You also limit access by refusing to participate in their emotional cycles. Toxic people often operate on patterns, anger, guilt, silent treatment, victimhood, drama. These cycles repeat because they work. The moment you stop engaging in those patterns, the cycle breaks. When they try to provoke anger, you stay calm. When they try to guilt trip you, you stay firm. When they use silence to punish you, you use that silence as a break, not a threat. When they play the victim, you don't rush to rescue them. By refusing to participate, you communicate that their emotional games no longer have power over you. Reducing emotional access also requires learning how to say no without guilt. Toxic people hate the word no because it represents boundaries they cannot cross. But every time you say no calmly and confidently, you build a new layer of self-respect. You don't need long explanations. You don't need to soften your no to protect their feelings. A simple, I'm not able to do that or that doesn't work for me is enough. When you become comfortable saying no, they become uncomfortable manipulating you. And that discomfort is exactly what breaks their control. Another part of limiting access is limiting your reactions. When you stop reacting emotionally to their behavior, you deny them the one thing they rely on the most: your attention. Reactions feed toxic people. Silence starves them. Calmness confuses them. Indifference disarms them. You don't fight, you don't argue, you don't explain, you simply refuse to be moved. Your reaction becomes unbothered, steady, measured. That shift protects your energy like nothing else. When you start limiting access on all these levels, time, emotions, personal information, physical presence, plans, reactions, you transform the relationship automatically. You no longer dance to their rhythm. You no longer carry their emotional weight. You no longer give them the space to influence your inner world. You move from being accessible to selective, from being drained to being in control, from being manipulated to being empowered. Detaching from the chaos of toxic people is one of the smartest and strongest decisions you can make, because toxic behavior thrives only when you stay emotionally connected to it. The more you care about their opinions, their moods, their reactions, the more power they hold over your peace. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring as a human being. It means you stop letting someone else's dysfunction decide how you feel. You shift from absorbing their energy to observing it. You stop trying to fix their patterns and start protecting your own. You understand that their chaos is not your responsibility. And the moment you detach, they lose the ability to pull you into emotional traps, to confuse your self-worth, or to make you question your decisions. Detachment is freedom, clarity, and strength disguised as calm. Toxic people often create emotional storms, arguments, guilt, drama, passive aggression because they want a reaction. Chaos is their comfort zone. If you react emotionally, you enter their territory where they know exactly how to push and control. Detachment removes you from that territory. When they shout, you stay steady. When they provoke, you stay centered. When they twist words, you don't chase explanations. When they blame, you don't absorb it. You don't match their energy. You don't argue on their level. You don't get pulled into a place where logic disappears. Detachment means understanding that their storm is theirs to deal with. You don't step inside it just because they want company. One of the key parts of detachment is releasing the need to be understood by a toxic person. They don't listen to understand. They listen to attack or twist. They don't want clarity. They want control. You can explain your point 10 different ways, and they will ignore all 10 because agreement isn't their goal. Once you detach from the need to make them see your side, you reclaim enormous emotional energy. You stop explaining yourself endlessly. You stop arguing over things that don't matter. You stop trying to win a battle that's designed for you to lose. Your peace becomes more important than being right in the eyes of someone who will never see the truth clearly. This mindset frees you from frustration and disappointment. Detachment also involves not expecting change from them. Toxic people rarely change just because you wish they would. They change only when they want to, and most of them don't want to because their patterns give them power. When you stop hoping they'll suddenly become self-aware, kind, or considerate, you stop putting your emotional well-being in their hands. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop waiting for consistency from someone who thrives on unpredictability. You stop tying your peace to something unstable. Acceptance isn't approval. Acceptance is emotional maturity. It's recognizing that someone is who they are and choosing not to let that shape your inner world. Another powerful element of detachment is controlling what you internalize. Toxic people love shifting blame. They'll criticize you for things they do themselves. They'll make you feel guilty for setting boundaries. They'll call you selfish for choosing peace. They'll act offended when you refuse to carry their emotional baggage. Detachment means refusing to internalize any of that. You learn to say, "This is not mine." You let their comments fall flat. You recognize projection when you see it. You don't take responsibility for feelings they created within themselves. You don't carry the weight of their insecurities. You don't let their words become your identity. You protect your self-worth by separating what's yours from what's theirs. Detachment also means choosing silence over unnecessary conflict. Toxic people often escalate arguments because they want emotional intensity. Your silence is not surrender, it is strategy. It denies them the drama they feed on. When you refuse to argue, you deny them the chaos they crave. You create a calm atmosphere they can't control or understand. Silence is not avoidance, it's refusing to waste emotional energy on someone who only listens to their own voice. Silence is choosing peace over participation in nonsense. Silence is a boundary, not a weakness. Another part of detachment involves managing your expectations and controlling how much emotional space this person occupies in your life. You stop giving them the mental spotlight. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop letting their opinions echo in your mind. You stop letting their behavior dictate your mood for the entire day. You build an internal filter where their words and actions lose significance. Their comments no longer sting. Their reactions no longer shake you. Detachment empties the emotional space they once occupied. You also detach by stepping back and seeing them objectively. When you look at a toxic person without emotional lenses, you begin noticing patterns. You see how their insecurity fuels their behavior. You see how their manipulation is really fear. You see how their anger is a mask for their lack of control. You see how their criticism reflects their own unhappiness. This perspective helps you detach because you stop taking their behavior personally. You understand that they act this way with everyone, not just you. Their toxicity is not caused by you, so you stop feeling responsible for fixing it. Detachment involves choosing where you invest your emotional resources. Instead of pouring energy into chaos, you pour it into stability, your growth, your goals, your peace, your self-respect. You shift from reacting to redirecting. You become intentional about who receives your energy and why. And toxic people fall to the bottom of that list. Not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. You choose people who bring clarity, not confusion. People who lift you up, not drain you. People who respect your boundaries, not violate them. Finally, detachment means understanding that peace is a decision you make repeatedly. Toxic people won't suddenly stop being toxic because you detach. They may even try harder at first, but your steadiness becomes your shield. You choose calm every time they choose chaos. You choose self-respect every time they choose manipulation. You choose emotional distance every time they try to pull you back into the old dynamic. And with every choice, their impact on your mind weakens further.